15 at the moment, it's 12.8 degrees. ABC News.
Get your mornings off to a great start
with Peter Gers
on 891 ABC Adelaide.
Good morning, South Australia. Peter Gers here, filling in for, poor old Ian Henschke. Yes, but I'm enjoying working his shift, even though when getting up at 5 o'clock it seems like you're going to catch a plane. But you don't. You drive to Collinswood. It becomes fascinating driving in at sort of quarter past six rather in the morning, and when there's very little on the road, but everything on the road, it becomes intensely interesting. Does it pay to haggle with power companies? That's coming up. We'll also learn about young people with good manners or not. Do we need a digital detox? The lovely and talented singer Rachel Learcar is coming into the studio, and Gerald Saville has very cleverly digitised all the advertiser funeral and death notices back to 1971, which becomes a marvellous historical resource. On him, we'll speak to him about that huge task and what that means. Now, I've been a customer of AGL and for my electricity and Origin for my gas without any problems whatsoever. And I have been called time to time, I believe it's called churning, when rival power companies, how do they get my number, but nonetheless ring me, and I have said no thank you, I'm more than happy to stay as it is. And then about a month ago someone from AGL rang me, and I must have been a weak moment, and they said, if you switch to have your gas from us as well, we can give you 14% here and 16% discount there, da-da-da-da-da. And in a weak moment I thought, that seems like a good idea. And I said yes. So then all this correspondence in torrents comes from AGL. Next thing I know, a week later, I've got a rather aggressive lady from Melbourne ringing me from Origin with 20% discounts for both, should I change my mind and go back to Origin. Then it becomes really complicated. She can't be called back. I tried to call her back in Melbourne, and it's one of those numbers they can call you, you can't call them. Then when I finally talked to her, and this will only take 2 minutes, 7 minutes later, I'm still being sold, and then I have to ring AGL and tell them that I have to bail out. Then I get all the correspondence from Origin, none of which I really understand. All this is, I suppose, helping Australia Post, if no one else. Then yesterday, a nice fellow from South Australia, from AGL, rings me, and I said, I'm glad you called because I've been feeling guilty because I have no problem with AGL, and I want to go back to where I was and keep my electricity with AGL. My gas with Origin, what are you offering me? Because I was worried by the Origin deal that it was only for a year. This super-duper discount was only for a year, and then after a year, what do you do then? And you might have to pay a lot more. So anyway, I'm now back to AGL for electricity and Origin for gas, back to where I started with, I think, a slightly better deal. Joel Gibson is campaign director of One Big Switch. What do you make of all that, Joel?
Peter, I wish I could say I was surprised, but I've just been through a very similar experience with a couple of retailers myself, and I think it's not uncommon. It can be a clunky process, but I will say this: it's the reason that this has happened to you is because at the moment the market is very competitive. And retailers are working hard. They're proactively contacting people with very good offers to try and move them. And we would rather see that scenario, if you like, than one where they're not calling you, contacting you to make you very good offers, and they're just slowly ratcheting up the price without you paying attention. And before you know it, you're paying hundreds of dollars too much every year.
But I suppose this points up our general ignorance in that we don't really know what we've got. See, we're so used to it being a fixed price. And when it was the old ETSA and the old Sagasco and state-owned organisations, and everybody paid the same and all of that. Now that it's this free market, it's a mess. We don't really know what we're paying. We may be paying too much, but we don't really know the veracity of these deals, Joel.
That's right. It's the best and the worst thing about a free market. The best thing is that, frankly, the best deals on the market are better than they were before deregulation. The worst thing about it is, as you say, it's much more a labyrinthine environment for a consumer to navigate, and that is unfortunate. But for those who are prepared to spend a little bit of time, as you have done, making sure they're on a good plan, you can save hundreds of dollars by switching from the worst plan on the market to the best.
Well, I'm not sure I have, actually, because I've been kind of intransigent. Maybe the Origin deal was better, but what worried me about the Origin deal was it limited 12 months. So after 12 months, you would have to renegotiate, and surely the deal wouldn't be as good.
That is very common these days. Unfortunately, the vast majority of offers now are valid for 12 months, and there's no guarantee as to what will happen after that 12 months. In fact, if you look at the fine print of most 12-month electricity contracts, they even reserve the right to change the rates during those 12 months. Not the discount, mind you, but the rates underlying. So, look, that's an unfortunate fact at the moment. That's the way the market's headed. But and we have seen examples of people being moved on to inferior plans at the end of their agreement period. So it's definitely something to watch.
And one of the issues is that the bulk of the charge is in the fixed costs, not the actual usage. So I remember one of these operatives telling me that I was going to save $60 a year for all this change, because the discount is not actually on the fixed costs, it's on the usage, isn't it?
Yeah, well, again, in the case of most offers, you're absolutely right. The discount is on the usage, and there's no avoiding the supply charge, the daily fixed cost, which is climbing exponentially. There are some offers out there which discount both usage and supply. It's definitely worth keeping an eye out for those offers, because then you can actually get that daily supply charge down slightly. And especially for pensioners and smaller households with smaller usage. It's tricky, that supply charge factor, because you can kind of control your usage as much as possible, reduce your usage right down to the absolute minimum. But if you can't avoid that supply charge, some people are paying, $1,000 a year just on supply charges before they've even turned on a light switch. 1300 222 891. It's like your sewage charges, independent on where you live, that sort of thing. That's another drama. Joel Gibson is the campaign director of One Big Switch. We're talking about whether it's worth haggling with power companies and moving from one to t'other when they ring you to make offers. But this is very common. It's happening to everyone, is it, Joel? Particularly at the moment, we find around that end of financial year period, June, and now into July, when there's a lot of pricing changes around the country, we find this has been a very, very competitive couple of months.
Yep.
And some, if not all, of the retailers are really bending over backwards to win new customers and also to retain existing customers. So one thing every electricity bill payer needs to know is that the offers that are advertised by your power company are not necessarily the only offers they have. They will usually have a retention offer, which they have in their back pocket.
Yep.
And you often only get to see that when you have one foot out the door. So you've got to be prepared to move. You may not have to move to get the best offer, but you've got to be prepared to just to really. It's a bit like shopping in some of the countries, unfortunately, Peter.
Yep.
It doesn't come naturally to a lot of Australians to haggle, but if you don't haggle, frankly, you're going to pay too much.
If you don't ask, you don't get.
Exactly right.
But I think, and you may call it laziness, but it used to be called customer loyalty. I had no problem with Origin or AGL, but I suppose it's like politics. the devil. It's better to have the devil you know than than to change and be stuffed around by a new company. A lot of phone plans work like that. We're not happy with the supplier, but we'd stay with them because they might be better than the next one.
Well, that's right. There is a lot of fear of change. When we ask people, I mean, we've got over 500,000 members around Australia, and we ask them if they haven't switched, why not?
Yep.
We get about 30-something% of them saying, "Well, I'm afraid of the unknown," you know. And so that's a very real fear out there. But I would say this, that electricity, the electrons, they're all selling the same product. There's no difference between AGL's electricity and Origin's and your second tier and challenger brands. They compete on customer service and price, and those are the two things that matter. So, you know, if you're getting a good price and you feel the customer service is up to scratch, then you're doing pretty well. The other thing I would say, there's a great saying in consumer affairs which was popularised by an American consumer advocate, and that is that near enough is almost always good enough. You know, we'd love to have the absolute best offer, the best plan on the market at all times, but the reality is the market moves every week, and so if you've got two retailers offering you discounts of 20%, whichever one you go with, it sounds like you're going to be on a pretty good offer.
Thank you, Joel Gibson, Campaign Director of One Big Switch. Bill of Woodcroft. Hi, Bill.
Good morning, Peter, and how are you?
Thanks for your call.
Oh, thank you for having me. I just wanted to call in and say that many of the times these offers come out is just before the regulator allows price increases in the base charges, which means that while you're given a discount and they quote charges, they don't include any increase that's caused by the carrier, so that you can end up paying more than you think you're going to pay. And my experience with calls that you get from the companies that are offering you to switch to a new company with wonderful discounts is that you don't really know what you're paying until you sit down and actually work it out based on their fees. It varies quite considerably.
Caveat emptor.
Exactly.
Buyer beware. Thank you, Bill. That's good advice. Mark Henley from Uniting Care. Hello, Mark.
Good morning, Peter, and that does seem strange to say.
What is it now? I've forgotten.
It's morning.
Oh! No, I thought I'd made a mistake with it. How are you, Mark?
Yes, I'm doing well.
Now, each time you've heard this discussion about switching power companies, each time I've had a salesperson trying to talk me round to switching power companies, they've always asked me, "Do you pay your bills on time?" Fortunately, 90% of the time I do. I've occasionally asked for an extension, but it seems, are these contracts, these new deals, determined by paying on time? What if you don't pay on time? Is the contract null and void? Do you know that, Mark?
Yeah, invariably there is, where you're being offered a discount, many of those discounts are tied to paying on time. So I think there's a couple of things that customers need to be really careful of when they're being rung and made offers.
Yes.
The first one is, you know, the discount sounds fantastic, 16, 20%, but 16% or 20% or what it is, off what?
Yes.
You know, so what's the starting point? And invariably the starting point is very different than what you might think the starting point is.
Yes.
So is that 16% off my existing bill, or is that 16% off something else? And in fact, the Australia ACCC has been looking at this discount from what pretty carefully. So that's the first question is, well, if I'm being offered a discount, from what is the discount? The second thing, as you absolutely say, Peter, is it's critical to see what the conditions are. And, you know, if part of the discount is relying on paying on time, know what your paying behaviour is. You know, if you're like me and forget or whatever, then, you know, a pay on time discount is probably not that helpful. So, you know, again, it's a case of buyer beware. But if I can sort of reinforce what Joel is saying, I think it's a case of, I'd encourage your listeners to look for a better deal, not necessarily the absolute best, and start with your own retailer. So go to them and say, ring them up and say, okay, what can you do for me that's better? Bearing in mind, as you were saying, that the supply charge should be coming down by about $180 for the average bill, because the South Australian Power Network's the distributor component will be going down for the average bill by about that amount. So look, unfortunately, it's confusing, but I'd really encourage people to look at the discount from what and what are the conditions of the discounts.
And are you seeing much, we're led to believe you're seeing lots of people who can't pay their bills?
Look, there's no question that over the last, probably 4 or 5 years, our financial counsellors say, look, we're seeing a lot of people doing it really tough, but it's been the significant increase in utility bills which invariably is the factor that pushes people over the edge financially. So that's why we've taken so much interest in what is happening to utility bills.
I find, gas has certainly gone up. I find electricity not so bad. It's the, mind you, I'm pretty canny with electricity. Water is shocking.
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, electricity, we've seen massive increases over the last 5 or 6 years, and now they're stabilising, but at what we would say is still very high levels based on the massive gains that the industry's made in the past. Gas bills are continuing to rise, and yes, water, we've seen big increases there, and we're just about to enter the next regulatory period for water.
Does that mean it'll go up?
Well, certainly a number of us will be arguing that that the price of water's got to come down a fair bit. But in the end, the Essential Services Commission will have to make the decision there based on what information they've got, and that will happen over the next 12 months. So that's not going to happen overnight.
Mark, continue your good work, please.
Can I just say one more thing very quickly, Peter?
Yes.
If people are wanting some advice about energy prices, the Australian Energy Regulator runs a website called Energy Made Easy. And I would encourage people to look at that website if they want to spend a bit of time to get a bit more information. So that's website Energy Made Easy. It's really quite helpful.
Thank you, Mark, and thanks to Joel Gibson, Campaign Director of One Big Switch. Walter of Tea Tree Gully has called 891 Mornings. Hello, Walter.
Yes, good morning, Peter. These energy brokers that offer their services like iSelect and all the rest of it, they're absolute rip-off merchants. I went to look at my gas, and they phone around and find out the best supplier for the price and all the rest of it.
Yep.
It was exactly the same price that I could get myself on the internet.
There you are.
I then went to AGL and said to them, look, it's the same price as iSelect get.
Yeah.
How much commission do they get? They wouldn't tell me how much they pay iSelect. So I said, look, you just give me their commission off the price of my gas. Guess what they did? They gave me 18% off my gas immediately.
Thank you, Walter.
It's a rip-off.
All the best, Walter. And it also takes a lot of time and headspace, and I don't know, why don't the companies just, I know it's employing people, salespeople, it's helping Australia Post and telecommunications companies, but wouldn't it be just a lot easier if they gave everybody 10% discount or something? Now, here on 891 Mornings, Peter